You're just bitter because mom finally found a real man. That's what Tyler said. Not screamed, not spat out in teenage defiance, just tossed it casually, like he was commenting on the weather. One leg propped on the coffee table I built with my own damn hands, PlayStation controller in one hand, half a protein bar in the other. I looked up from the Sunday paper, slow and deliberate. Let the words marinate. He didn't even glance up. Ron's taking me to the driving range this weekend, he added, chewing with his mouth open. He says I've got a natural swing. You never even tried with me. That's when I knew I was done. Not because of the insult itself. I've worked construction for 40 years. I've been called worse by people in safety vests and courtrooms. But because I recognized the tone, that effortless arrogance, the kind you don't get on your own, the kind you inherit from your mother, or the guy now grinning in her Facebook selfies like he just won a prize out of a Cracker Jack box. I folded the paper slowly, let it rest on the coffee table. I looked around the room, oak flooring I refinished after Denise wanted it, less country, the bookshelf I built to fit her grandmother's antique vase. The family portrait I'd paid $1,000 to have professionally taken because Tyler hated his teeth and Denise said she needed Photoshop. All of it mine. All of it earned. All of it now housing a stranger. I stood up. Tyler finally looked at me, like maybe he sensed something in my movement. Some shift. I didn't yell. I didn't frown. I just nodded. All right, I said. I understand. He blinked. Wait, understand what? I didn't answer. Just walked past him, down the hall, into the guest room closet, reached up into the crawl space where the safe was tucked behind a pile of outdated Christmas decorations and a cracked humidifier. Combination dial turned slow, 38-14-07. Click. Inside, a folder. Thick, pristine, labeled with a single word in bold Sharpie contingencies. Funny thing, Denise always thought I was paranoid. Why do you keep records like some prepo accountant? She'd laugh. Because I've seen scaffolding fail. Beams crack. People too. You don't build a house without planning for the storm. Inside the folder. Title deed to the house, signed and notarized under my name only. College fund account info, set up under my LLC's discretionary clause, meaning I could revoke it at any time. Banking log showing every dollar I ever transferred, noted and timestamped. A separate lease agreement for a modest 2-bedroom apartment I'd been keeping for years, just in case. I hadn't opened that file in nearly 6 years. I dusted it off, sat at the desk in the corner, fired up my old Dell laptop, logged into the college fund portal. I didn't pull the plug yet, just looked at the balance, $82,004.33. For Tyler, for the boy I raised since he was 5, who once called me dad during a flu-ridden nightmare, who now thought my job, my presence, my very usefulness had expired like a carton of milk. Denise was at her sister's that weekend. Wine and gossip and me time before her next business seminar in Scottsdale. I didn't bother calling her. I spent the rest of that night in silence, reading over every document like I was preparing for a court date with God. I didn't feel angry. Not really. It was worse. I felt done. There's something terrifying about a man who no longer needs to be understood. By 3 a.m., I'd lined up a call with my lawyer for Monday morning. I drafted 2 emails, one to my financial advisor, the other to a moving company I'd used once before when Denise and I took a break. And then I sat in that chair and watched the sun crawl up through the blinds. The house was so quiet, you could hear the clock tick. The same one Tyler threw across the garage once because I wouldn't let him take the car out at midnight. Tick, tick, tick. Each one a nail in the coffin of my patience. I stood, folded the file, packed it into my old military duffel, went back to the living room. Tyler was still passed out on the couch, mouth open, phone slipping from his hand. I didn't bother saying goodbye. When I closed that front door behind me, I didn't just leave the house. I left a version of myself inside, when I had no intention of dragging into whatever came next. The hallway was still dark when I zipped up the duffel bag. No creaks from upstairs. Tyler was out cold, probably dreaming of Ron teaching him how to hold a driver while bragging about stock options that didn't exist. I paused at the top of the stairs, not for sentiment, just making sure I didn't forget anything. My watch, my passport, the folder. I'd made the apartment lease 3 years ago during a rough patch with Denise. She thought we were redefining boundaries. I thought we were circling the drain. Never moved in, Just paid the rent quietly and kept the keys on my keychain behind the one labeled shed. She never noticed. The drive took 22 minutes. Every traffic light green, like God wanted me gone too. The apartment was small, carpeted, not stylish, not cozy, functional. One window, a couch I'd picked up from an estate sale, and a bed I'd slept on maybe twice. It still smelled like cardboard and old Windex. I stood in the center of the living room, dropped my bag, and exhaled like I'd just stepped off a battlefield. I didn't feel like a man abandoning his home. I felt like a man finally leaving someone else's. By 8 a.m., I was logged into the county recorder's system. The house, technically, had always been under my name. When Denise and I got divorced the first time, long story, I never added her back on. She never asked. She just assumed. Most people do. The LLC I used to transfer the title? Clark Reed Holdings. Dormant, quiet, no activity for 7 years. Just sitting there with a clean EIN and no debt. In 15 minutes, the deed was recorded under its name. Our family home, Denise's kingdom, was now a sterile asset owned by a faceless corporation. The next tab I opened, Tyler's 529 College Fund. I stared at the account for a full minute. I knew what I was about to do wasn't just cold, it was surgical. I clicked Pause Monthly Contributions. Then clicked Begin Escrow Transfer. It asked for a reason. I typed Beneficiary Reassessment Pending. That's lawyer speak for you burned the bridge, kid. Hope Ron's got his checkbook. My phone buzzed around noon. Denise. Caller ID. Denise. Home. Not ex-wife. I left it ringing. She called again. This time I picked up. Harold? Where the hell are you? I could hear clinking glasses in the background. Probably at brunch with her sister, ordering something with Prosecco and pretending she wasn't worried. You forget your meds? She said. Or just having a senior moment? I waited. Let the silence stretch until she got uncomfortable. No, I finally said. I just remembered who I am. Click. No shouting. No begging. Just that. By evening, I was sitting across from David Jerson, my lawyer of 20 years. Old school guy, suspenders and all. Jewish grandfather energy with a courtroom mean streak. I handed him the folder. He flipped through, whistled softly. Been a long time since I saw you this prepared. She finally got the son to say it, I replied. He didn't ask what. He just nodded and opened a drawer. All right, let's make this clean and ugly. We drafted 3 letters that night. One to the registrar of Tyler's school notifying them of potential revocation of financial support due to change in legal guardianship status. One to Denise, and signed but ready, spelling out the structure of the house transfer and her 0 ownership stake. One to Ron, just a name and an address I scribbled down with a sticky note that read, You want the throne? Here's the crown. Good luck, pal. As David typed, I leaned back and stared out the window. My view? A parking lot and a dumpster. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt peace. Not because I was free, not because I was vengeful, but because I had finally decided to stop bleeding for people who brought knives to dinner. The photo hit my inbox at 6:42 p.m. No subject line, no message, just an image. Tyler, in a borrowed sports jacket, grinning like he'd just been knighted. Ron, next to him, oversized Rolex creeping out from under a linen cuff. They were seated at some overpriced steakhouse, the kind that charges $90 for a ribeye and $25 for artisanal water. Behind them, like a trophy on wheels, Ron's black Porsche 911 gleamed under parking lot lights. Probably rented. Maybe leased. Definitely not earned. Caption, Real men handle things. I stared at it for a moment. Not out of pain. Out of awe. The kind of awe you feel watching a raccoon figure out how to open a trash can lid. There was something so theatrical in the whole display, Tyler with that smug, premature confidence of a boy who thinks the rules of adulthood are written in horsepower and cocktails. And Ron, smiling like a man who just convinced himself he hadn't walked into a trap. Denise must have taken the photo. Maybe she even told them to pose that way. Maybe she thought it would sting. What it did, actually, was settle me. I didn't need to reply. I didn't need to engage. That message, sent like some middle-aged, lipstick-smeared war banner, only confirmed what I already knew. None of them thought I would act. They thought I was bluffing. But the only thing more dangerous than a man with nothing left to lose is a man who already let go. I logged into the Education Trust platform. It took 11 seconds. Click. Login. Multi-factor authentication. Open Tyler's portfolio. Balance, $82,004.33. The number sat there like a final favor waiting to be burned. One more click. Reassign beneficiary/enter escrow. A warning popped up. Are you sure? This cannot be reversed without legal proceedings. I clicked yes. Then typed, transfer to holding until further instructions. Beneficiary review in process. Done. Just like that, a future was paused. Not deleted. Not destroyed. Just suspended. He would still get into college. Maybe. But someone would have to actually pay for it now. Someone would have to step in, make the phone calls, move the money, write the checks. Let's see if real man Ron was willing to co-sign student loans at 7% interest. I closed the laptop, poured myself a glass of scotch. Something old. Something peaty. Something Tyler once spat out and said, tastes like burnt wood and regret. Fitting. My phone buzzed again, another message from Denise. This one had a gif. Tyler and Ron laughing. Text overlay, good luck catching up, Harold winking face. They thought they were in a race. They didn't realize I'd already finished it and sold the track. I didn't reply. Instead, I went to the folder again. Removed the last item, an envelope marked, hold until escrow confirmed. Inside, a letter to the school board. A list of contributions I'd made over the years. A proposal for a merit-based scholarship fund under my name for children of blue-collar workers in our district. The kind of kids who didn't call the man who raised them obsolete because someone flashier bought a bottle of mid-shelf Cabernet. The fund would be seeded from Tyler's former account. Fully legal. Fully notarized. Fully mine. The money wouldn't vanish. It would just skip a generation. Tyler wasn't the first to mistake silence for weakness. He wouldn't be the last to learn how wrong that assumption could be. Denise had just finished a mimosa and half a salmon tartine when her phone rang. Private school area code. She rolled her eyes, assuming it was another donation drive. She answered on speaker, expecting to nod through another pitch for a digital smartboard fund. Instead, the voice on the other end was tight, professional, but unmistakably strained. Mrs. Chandler, this is Susan from the billing office at Westwood Academy. We're calling to confirm. Denise interrupted. Yes, the tuition's paid. It always is. Just check with Harold. That's the issue, Susan said, cutting in with the kind of voice people use when they don't want to say the thing they're about to say. The payment for Tyler's spring term bounced this morning. Twice. And the attached college trust for future tuition was flagged as frozen in our system. Denise blinked. Her fork paused midair. That's not possible. There must be a mistake. We've double-checked. The trust fund account ending in 7193 is under review. We were instructed not to process any withdrawals until further notice. We were hoping you could clarify. Denise faked a polite chuckle. Must be a glitch. I'll get back to you. She hung up and immediately dialed Harold. Number disconnected. No voicemail. No forwarding. Just a robotic tone that said, this person no longer exists in your ecosystem. She stared at the phone, heart ticking faster now. Tried again. Nothing. She opened their old text thread, blank. He had deleted their entire history. Gone. She scrolled up anyway, desperate for something familiar. The last message was from 2 days ago, sent by her. Guess who's eating Wagyu with a real man tonight? Face-blowing kiss. No reply. Not even a read receipt. That night, she confronted Ron at dinner. Tyler was too busy on his phone to notice the tension, bragging about how his swing had impressed the club coach. He froze the college fund, she snapped under her breath. The payment bounced. Ron cut into his fillet, unfazed. So call him. Fix it. I did. His number's dead. You said he'd just pay. Like always. Ron shrugged, wiped his mouth with the cloth napkin like they were discussing a parking ticket. I thought he would. But maybe he got tired of being the family wallet. Denise's wine tasted suddenly metallic. She went home, pulled out the thick accordion folder she kept all the official things in: birth certificates, school records, old tax returns. No sign of the trust documentation. It had always been Harold's domain. He handled the logistics, the transfers. She remembered laughing once, wine-drunk, saying, "Thank God you're the boring one in the relationship." Now she ripped through drawers. Nothing. She opened her email. searched for anything with the word trust. There, an old email from Harold's lawyer, David Jerson, dated 2 years ago. As discussed, the trust structure has been formalized under your sole discretion. Denise Chandler does not appear on any ownership or trustee lines. She remembered scoffing at the time. Of course he put it all under his name. Classic Harold. She also remembered not caring. She was too busy planning her girls' trip to Mexico. No? Her stomach dropped into her knees. She fired off a panicked email to David. It bounced. His firm had updated their domain. Harold's old contact no longer worked. She searched online, found a new number, dialed it. Voicemail. In desperation, she opened Facebook Messenger and typed Harold's name. No profile. Blocked. She stared at her reflection in the black screen for a long moment. Mascara perfect. Lipstick sharp. But something in her eyes looked different now, small. Almost peripheral. Like she'd been written out of the frame. Upstairs, Tyler was blasting music again. Something about winning. Something about being a king. Denise closed the laptop. Walked to the kitchen. She needed a drink. And an explanation. But neither were coming. Denise was halfway into Downward Dog when she caught the whisper. 2 mats over, Stacy, tight ponytail, fake tan, the kind of woman who lived for HOA drama, leaned in close to another woman and murmured, "It was Ron. By the bar near the lake. Thursday night. Blonde. Definitely not Denise." The other woman let out a low, knowing like she'd just heard about someone's dog getting hit by karma. Denise tried to focus on her breath. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the teeth. But the words clawed into her head. Blonde. Not Denise. She told herself it was gossip. Small town, bored housewife theater. But a sliver of her stomach had already twisted into that old familiar knot, the one she used to feel before Harold would come home late from a job site, and she wanted there to be another woman, just so she could have a reason to feel important again. After class, Stacy intercepted her in the parking lot, all faux concern and Botoxed brows. "Hey, hon," she said. "Just, be careful. Men like that? They play short games. They get bored fast, especially when the spotlight moves off them." Denise smiled like a woman holding a grenade behind her back. "Thanks. I'll keep that in mind." At home, Tyler was in a full tantrum. "This is ruining everything," he shouted, flinging college brochures across the table. "I had 3 interviews lined up. They asked me about financials. How the hell do I tell them my tuition got nuked?" Denise rubbed her temples. "We're figuring it out. You said Harold would pay. I thought he would." Tyler paced the kitchen, fist balled. "You let Ron get in your head. You pushed Harold out. And now everything's—" He stopped. Looked away. Denise blinked. "Now everything's what?" He didn't answer. Just stormed off. Slammed his bedroom door so hard the framed family photo in the hallway tilted sideways. Denise stared at the photo. Tyler was 13 in it, braces and dimples. Harold's hand rested on his shoulder like an anchor. She remembered that day, how Harold had been the only one who thought to bring sunscreen. How he'd driven them home after Tyler got sick from too many hot dogs. How she'd snapped at him for hovering too much. And now he was gone. Just erased. That afternoon, Denise drove to Harold's old office. The place looked the same. Sterile lobby, fake ficus in the corner, receptionist with the same bored expression and glassy eyes. "I'm here to see Harold," she said, forcing cheer. The receptionist didn't even look up. "He doesn't work here anymore." Denise blinked. "What?" "He sold his stake in the firm 6 weeks ago. New partners took over. He's not affiliated." Denise's throat tightened. "Can you tell me where he went? Or give me a forwarding?" The receptionist stood and walked to the filing cabinet without a word. Returned with a sealed envelope. Plain. No return address. Just her name. Denise Chandler. "He said you might come by eventually." Denise took it, hands trembling. In the car, she tore it open. Inside were 3 pages. The first, confirmation that Clark Reed Holdings now owned the property formerly listed under Harold's name. The second, a copy of the trust reallocation to the new Community Scholarship Fund, already active. The third, a typed note in Harold's handwriting font. "No greeting. No sign-off. You always thought I wouldn't act. That I was too comfortable, too predictable. Turns out, I was just waiting for clarity. You gave it to me the day your son said Ron was better. Thank him for the motivation." Denise sat motionless in the driver's seat for 10 full minutes, envelope clutched in her lap. The whispers from yoga class weren't just gossip. They were foreshadowing. Ron was unraveling. Tyler was boiling. And Harold? Harold was winning. Quietly. Surgically. She hadn't lost a battle. She'd walked off the field before realizing the war had already started. The documents made a neat little stack on the kitchen island. White paper. Black ink. Sharp edges. No color. No warmth. Like an autopsy report. Denise skimmed the top page, her name in bold, followed by legal phrases she didn't recognize but felt like hammers. Trust dissolution initiated. Beneficiary privileges revoked. Reallocation effective immediately. Her mouth went dry. The second page was worse. Tyler's college fund, officially terminated. Not dormant, not paused. Dissolved. The account was liquidated into a new holding under the Clark Reed Education Initiative. She recognized that name now. The LLC Harold had used to ghost transfer the house. And now, the same entity was listed as the controlling manager of the scholarship program. Priority, low-income first-generation college applicants. Independent board oversight. Translation, Tyler was locked out. No recourse. No appeal. The last page made her knees weak. House title. Legally reassigned to Clark Reed Holdings, effective 2 weeks ago. With a note at the bottom. Current residents may occupy property for 30 days pending vacancy or new lease agreement. She dropped the paper and grabbed her phone. Dialed the county clerk's office, hands trembling. Hi. Yes, I'm trying to verify the ownership of a property on Willow Bend Drive, number 3141. She could hear typing, polite clicking, someone chewing gum on the other end. Yes, that was transferred from private ownership to Clark Reed Holdings LLC on the 12th. The clerk said matter-of-factly. Is there a specific document you need? Denise felt like the floor was tilting. No, that's all. She hung up. Outside, she could hear Ron's Porsche pulling into the driveway. Those obnoxious revs he always added, like the neighbors needed to know a midlife crisis had arrived. She didn't wait. When he stepped into the house, she met him at the threshold of the kitchen, paper in one hand, glass of wine in the other. She didn't say hello. He took the house, she said. Voice flat. He used that LLC, Clark Reed, or whatever. It's company property now. Ron blinked. Wait, what? She handed him the document. He read it once. Then again. You said he'd roll over, she hissed. Ron ran a hand through his too dark hair, jaw tightening. I didn't think he had it in him. He froze the trust. Terminated it. It's gone. The whole damn fund. Ron handed the papers back, looking off like he was trying to do math in his head. That man plays long games. Denise exploded. You think? She stormed off to the bedroom, dug through the drawer where she kept the one piece of paper she never thought she'd need. Harold's old address, scribbled on an envelope from years ago, before they moved into her dream home. Before Ron. Before everything started melting behind polished smiles and Instagram captions. She drove. Fast. Didn't tell Ron. Didn't bring Tyler. When she pulled into the apartment complex, everything looked too quiet. A different world. It didn't feel like Harold. It felt stripped. No flowers. No car in the spot. Just a door. Number 3B. She got out, walked up the steps. Her hand hovered over the doorbell, but she didn't press it. She knocked. Nothing. Waited. Knocked again. Still nothing. She leaned in close to the door, as if she could hear something. Breathing. Movement. Him. She whispered, Harold, please. But the silence felt intentional. Like a choice. Not absence, exile. She stayed there for 20 minutes, arms wrapped around herself as the wind picked up. She kept glancing at the door, hoping it would shift, creak, something. But it remained shut. Impossibly quiet. Like a vault that never held anything for her in the first place. Finally, she sat on the stoop, opened her phone, tried calling his number again, still disconnected. Her thumb hovered over her messages. She could text, apologize, beg. Instead, she stared at the screen and typed nothing. Back home, Ron was watching sports with the sound too loud. Tyler was upstairs, probably tearing holes in his acceptance letters. The kitchen lights buzzed faintly overhead. The house felt colder now, like it knew it didn't belong to her anymore. She poured another drink. And this time, it didn't taste like wine. It tasted like powerlessness. The sound of the laptop hitting the floor was sharp, final, like a bone snapping. Tyler stood over the shattered mess, chest heaving, face red and slick with sweat. His desk chair was overturned, textbooks flung across the carpet. On the wall, his college acceptance letters, Yale, Northwestern, USC, hung like mocking trophies. Symbols of a future that had vanished with the click of a button he hadn't even been allowed to witness. I had everything lined up, he screamed. He knew that. Why would he do this now? Denise stood in the doorway, arms folded like she was holding herself together with sheer willpower. Her mouth opened, then shut. She watched her son unravel like a cheap threadbare sweater, and for once, she didn't jump in to fix it. He turned on her. Say something. She stepped into the room slowly. Not as his mother. As a witness to consequences finally arriving. He did it, she said quietly, because you told him Ron was better. Tyler blinked, stunned. What? You sat in that living room, she continued, on that couch Harold picked out, in the house he built, under the roof he paid for, and you told him, your words, that Mom's new man is better than you. Tyler's face contorted. I didn't mean it like that. But you said it. And he heard you. And that man, for 17 years, did nothing but show up for you. Every parent-teacher night. Every scraped knee. Every science fair where your real dad didn't bother to send a postcard. Harold was there. I just wanted him to back off. Tyler yelled. I didn't know he'd Jesus, Mom. He destroyed me. No, she said, voice low, trembling. You destroyed his trust. And trust, Tyler, isn't a toy. You don't get to break it and then cry when it doesn't come back. Tyler grabbed the desk chair and hurled it into the wall. It cracked the plaster. One of the letters fell. He stood there panting, shaking, looking 12 years old again and terrified. Fix it, he begged. Please. Just call him. Denise didn't answer. She turned and walked out. It wasn't that she didn't want to help. It was that she finally understood Harold hadn't just withdrawn his money. He'd withdrawn himself. That night, when the house was dark and Tyler had retreated to the wreckage of his room, Denise grabbed her keys. She didn't tell Ron where she was going. She didn't leave a note. She drove in silence. The streets were mostly empty, lit only by traffic signals cycling through colors for cars that weren't there. When she reached Harold's apartment complex, the building looked as uninviting as it had the first time. Brick, blank, indifferent. She parked, turned off the ignition, and waited. Maybe he'd come home late. Maybe he was inside, sitting in the dark, sipping whatever he drank now. Maybe he was watching the security camera on his peephole, seeing her there, weighing the cost of compassion. She waited 37 minutes. Long enough for her mascara to smear. Long enough for the shame to set in. A man who had always shown up, had finally decided not to. She buried her face in her hands and cried. Quietly, but with the kind of grief that wasn't just for losing someone, but for realizing you had handed them the scissors and helped cut the cord. The door creaked open on the third knock, but only halfway. Just enough for Harold to see her face, mascara smudged, eyes raw, lips tight like they were holding in everything she couldn't afford to scream in a parking lot. Please, she whispered. He didn't say a word, just stepped aside. She walked in slowly, like a tenant returning to a burned-out home. The apartment was small, clean, deliberately impersonal. No photos, no clutter. The couch looked barely sat on. A single coffee mug on the table, steam rising faintly. Can we sit? She asked. You can, he replied, then gestured to the worn armchair across from him. He remained standing, arms crossed. She sank into the seat like her bones had given up. Harold, she said, voice cracking. Can we fix this? Please. He watched her for a long moment, then walked into the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water. Returned. Still standing. Why now? She looked up. Because Tyler's. No, he cut in. Why now? Why not when the trust first bounced? Why not after I froze the fund? Why not when I left? Why now? Denise swallowed. Because I didn't know how far you'd take it. He laughed once. A dry, humorless sound. She leaned forward, hands clasped. Harold, he's a stupid kid. He said something cruel. But you and I both know he's scared now. He needs help. You raised him. You were more of a father then. Would you have come, he asked suddenly, if Ron hadn't started showing cracks? Her lips parted. Closed. She blinked twice. looked away. Harold nodded slowly, like he'd just confirmed something he already knew. He sat across from her. Set the water down. Tyler's fund, he said, is gone. Legally. Permanently. Her whole body flinched. The money was reassigned. It's part of the Clark Reed Community Initiative now. College scholarships for working-class kids. First gen. Kids with no safety net. You can reverse it, she said quickly. We'll go to your lawyer. Tell him it was a mistake. I don't make legal mistakes. Denise stared at him like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. This wasn't the Harold who sat in her driveway with Gatorade when she had migraines. This wasn't the Harold who drove 6 hours to surprise her on her birthday when Tyler was 6 and puking on his cake. This Harold was colder. Still. Measured. I'm not doing this to hurt you, he said finally. Or him. She scoffed. You froze his future, Harold. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. No. You let him believe that future was unconditional. You taught him that respect was optional. That loyalty was something people owe you, not something you earn. Tears welled up again. She tried to keep them in. Failed. He continued, voice even. I didn't break him. I stopped protecting him from the break he already had coming. They sat in silence. Then he added, softly, I didn't want to become this version of myself. I gave you 1,000 chances to prove I didn't have to. Denise stood slowly. Her knees buckled a bit. Is there anything you can do? Even something small? Harold looked at her. For a moment, something flickered behind his eyes. Sadness? Pity? He walked to a drawer, pulled out a single sheet of paper, handed it to her. It was a list, local scholarship foundations, essay competitions, alternative funding options. I didn't bury him, he said. But I'm done carrying him. She held the paper with shaking hands. You used to say he was your son. He nodded. He used to act like it. Then stood up. Walked to the door. Opened it. Denise looked at him, begging for anything, even a final spark of warmth. But all he said was, lock it behind you. She stepped out. The door clicked shut with a sound that felt far louder than it should have. The letter arrived in a thick envelope with red stamped edges and the kind of official gravity usually reserved for lawsuits or death notices. Certified. Signature required. Delivered with that quiet sympathy from the mailman who clearly already knew too much. Denise signed for it with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. She sat at the kitchen table, same spot where she once uncorked a bottle of red and told her sister on speaker, Harold will never leave. He needs to feel needed. Now, the bottle was gone. The table felt colder. Emptier. Like it knew its time was nearly up. She opened the envelope slowly, as if peeling off skin. The first page was brutal in its clarity. Notice of residency termination. You are not listed as an owner, co-owner, or legal tenant on record. Clark Reed Holdings LLC hereby grants you 30 days to vacate the premises. No appeal. No loophole. No lifeline. The second page was worse. A handwritten note. Crisp. Unfolded. Just 12 words, but they hit like a sledgehammer. You told me what I wasn't. I believed you. Harold. Denise stared at it for a full minute before she even blinked. The irony was perfect. Poetic. Infuriating. She had said those words once, years ago, in a heat-of-the-moment argument she barely remembered. Something like, you're not his real father, Harold. You're just there. She said it to wound. To win an argument. To shift the weight of her own resentment. Now it was law. Tyler came down the stairs groggy and still in his boxers, rubbing his eyes. What's that? She didn't answer. Just handed him the letter. He read it silently, then again, slower. When his eyes hit the signature, something inside him snapped. His knees buckled, and he dropped into a chair. No, he can't. This was our house, he stammered. Denise didn't move. Tyler's voice rose, cracked. He raised me. He taught me how to ride a bike, how to tie a tie, how to check the oil. He tucked me in. And He looked up at her like a man realizing his reflection was a stranger. I told him Ron was better. I said it, didn't I? Denise nodded. You did. He wiped his face with both hands, now frantic. Okay, so we call him. We fix it. I'll apologize. I'll write a letter. Tyler. Her voice was thin. He's done. Tyler slammed his fist on the table, then froze, staring at the dent he'd left in the wood. The same wood Harold refinished by hand. The same kitchen Harold had built from scratch, plank by plank, because Denise wanted a warmer vibe. There was no warmth now, only echoes. Then came the knock. 2 men in matching shirts. Movers. Clipboard in hand. Clark Reed Holdings, one asked. "We've got a pre-scheduled pickup. Says you're vacating this address?" Denise nodded without speaking. The mover glanced at Tyler, who had slumped forward, face buried in his arms. They started with the living room. Carefully, efficiently, like it was someone else's home. At 5 p.m., Denise walked into the master bedroom and noticed something odd. Ron's closet was empty. No shoes. No suits. No smell of too expensive cologne. On the nightstand, a single card key from a hotel. No name. No goodbye. Just absence. She checked his drawer, empty. His car wasn't in the garage. He was gone. Just gone. No text. No call. No explanation. It hit her then. This wasn't just financial. This was extinction. Everything she had built was built on someone else's effort. And the moment he removed the foundation, the house didn't collapse, it evaporated. That night, as the sun set through the bay windows for what would be the last time she'd ever see it from that angle, Denise sat at the kitchen table. Same seat. Same hands folded. Only this time, there was no wine. No laughter. No plan. Just a woman watching her life get boxed up by strangers. The knock was soft. Not hesitant. Careful. Harold didn't move from his chair at first. He just sat, sipping black coffee from a chipped ceramic mug, the one with the faded words, "Measure twice, cut once." His father gave it to him the day he opened his first shop. He never used it until the day he left the house on Willow Bend. The knock came again. Still soft. Still measured. He stood, walked to the door, silent as a shadow, and looked through the peephole. There she was, Denise. Alone. Her makeup was clean this time, clothes neat, hair tied back. No drama. No mascara streaks. No Ron trailing behind her like a pantomime of masculinity. Just her, holding a letter in both hands like it weighed something far heavier than paper. He watched her breathe. Steady, but forced. Her lips moved. He couldn't hear the words, but he could read the shape. "Please." Then she knelt and placed the letter on the doormat. For a second, she stayed crouched like that, as if waiting for the door to swing open, to be pulled inside, to be forgiven. But it didn't, and she wasn't. She stood, slow and stiff like her knees ached. Took one final look at the door, then turned and walked away. Harold watched until she disappeared down the stairs. Then another few seconds longer. He didn't reach for the doorknob. He didn't pick up the envelope. Instead, he closed the blinds. The light in the room shifted. Softer now. Warmer. He walked back through the quiet space. The small apartment that had no photos on the walls, except one. He stopped in front of it. His father. Grease under his fingernails, blue flannel shirt. Smile like someone who never needed to raise his voice to end a conversation. Harold stared at the image. Then whispered, "Lesson passed down, Dad." Not out of anger. Not even out of grief. Out of completion. He'd spent his whole life trying to hold together things that resented the glue. He poured himself into a boy who saw loyalty as a weakness, and a woman who mistook consistency for boredom. And now, they were gone. Not dead. Not ruined. Just gone. He walked to the living room, sunlight pouring in through the western window, lighting up the dust like stars. Sat back down in his chair. Lifted the mug. Outside, the world spun on. Inside, Harold finally stopped.